You can now subscribe to Strava Craft Coffee and save 20% off every single time you get it sent straight to your door. You can pick the interval that you want it sent straight to your door, so you don't have to keep thinking about how much coffee you have left. Just subscribe, have it sent to you every 2 weeks or however long it takes you to get through a bag of coffee and get that delicious Strava Craft coffee sent directly to your door for 20% off every single time. If you haven't had Strava Craft coffee yet and you just want to try it, well, you can use the code DNVR20 now and get 20% off your first shipment. Or you can just come down to the DNVR bar and watch some sports today and get yourself a on-tap Strava Craft coffee CBD-infused cold brew that is all the rage for everyone here that works at DNVR. Those things are flowing like crazy up here in the office. So check out Strava Craft coffee today.
Broncos country is sitting in the south stands, drinking the Coors from Mile High. The best part of the weekend, hugging a perfect stranger as they become a friend, having a good time when the orange and blue WIN. Tuning in every day with the good folks down at DNVR.
And welcome in to another edition of DNVR Live, DNVR Broncos Live, or just the DNVR Broncos podcast, depending on how you're hearing this. Appreciate everyone tuning in with us. And a quick reminder to head over, if you're watching on Periscope and you're maybe having some troubles, head over to YouTube. Always a good connection over there. And you can subscribe to our YouTube channel, DNVR Sports. And you can, of course, throw us a thumbs up on this video, which we'll really appreciate. But another day in the books. And Zach, I'll let you do the honors here. Oh, you were muted. That's a tough scene.
My boy's muted. I'm ready to kick off training camp, day number 5 with you guys.
And quickly, before we get into all of the details of what went down at day 5 of training camp today, a shout out to our presenting sponsor, MSU Denver Online. Rigorous and affordable online programs taught by professors who bring the real world into the classroom. And we've got some people over here at DNVR who are taking some classes this summer there and really giving rave reviews of everything they're doing over at msudenver.edu/online. So you can check out all they have to offer at the website there that you see on the ticker, msudenver.edu/online. All right, Mace, hit us with it. What do we need to know from today's training camp practice?
All right, well, not full pads today. It was back in shells. Admittedly, selfishly, because I'm only at 1 of every 3 of these practices, I was a bit disappointed. I wanted to see some full pads today. Didn't happen. So that
you got whammied.
The intensity a little bit. Yeah, so they better have full pads on Sunday. That's all I'm going to say. Otherwise, I'm going to be feeling like I got ripped off here a little bit. But it was also a day that they actually did some, not game condition stuff, but they did have a couple of move the ball periods. And those are often illuminating. One thing that we saw, Jeff Driscoll, actually he's been inconsistent. The first time he was in move the ball today, actually got the offense downfield, got them to the 15-yard line in defensive territory. But then, and this is just sort of the Jeff Driscoll story so far, an ill-advised throw into heavy traffic that he put too much on. It was a short pass, a little bit of a slant to KJ Hamler, and the ball, the ball's got a lot of mustard on it. KJ can't handle it. It bounces. You got Duke Dawson with the deflection. It bounces up. It bounced off Draymond Jones. Eventually, Josie Jewell with the pick. But the moral of the story is, Jeff Driscoll, you can't throw it in traffic like that. For the receivers overall, it was a rough start, but it got better. You had some drops early. Jake Butt, who was working with the first team quite a bit today because Nick Vannett is in concussion protocol and Noah Fant was ill, as Vic Fangio pointed out, not COVID. So Jake Butt saw some first-team run. So did Troy Fumagalli. And of those two, and Albert O even got some first-team snaps as well, but of those two, Butt and Fumagalli, Butt dropped his potential touchdown pass. Fumagalli in a red zone period with a really nice grab where he reached up, kind of plucked it out of the sky. Isaac Yiadom was in coverage, but he kind of just jumped over him, kind of anticipated where the ball was going to be. Nice play for Fumagalli. So Fumagalli is going to be one of those guys who stood out today. But another guy who had a big day was Courtland Sutton. And he had an early drop. But boy, oh boy, did he bounce back. And he bounced back at the expense of Bryce Callahan for 2 long plays that probably would have been touchdowns in game conditions. One to the right side, one to the left side, predictably both from Drew Lock, because Drew and Courtland have this synergy going right now that's really going to pay dividends when you get to the regular season. But a couple of things. First of all, Courtland Sutton deep, always worth taking a chance. Your rule, Ryan, of throwing it up to Courtland Sutton when you cross the 50-yard line makes sense here. But the other thing is this. Bryce Callahan, not a match for Courtland Sutton, struggling when he goes against bigger receivers. They're counting on Bryce Callahan to be one of the top 2 corners, which means he's going to play outside in base. But he struggled in that role today, whereas later on in practice, when Courtland went against A.J. Boye in a red zone period, Boye got a pass defense to prevent a touchdown. So worth noting that as well.
How much of a concern is that, Mace, with Bryce getting beat by the bigger receivers? Is that something that you're really going to have to monitor throughout the season and make sure that he's not on those big guys?
A little bit. And the thing is, sometimes teams are going to try to set up that match against you. I think part of it is also Bryce Callahan, as good as he was in Chicago, what types of receivers was he facing when he was working as a slot corner? Typically smaller guys who are, about 5'10", 5'11", 180 to 190. When you're in that position, you are rarely seeing that 6'2", 210 to 220 pound receiver that can give you trouble. And Courtland gave Bryce Callahan a lot of trouble today. So if this is something that persists, and look, Bryce has made some plays in practice. I mean, on Friday, for example, when Courtland slipped, he made a break on the ball and got an interception. So it's not like Bryce Callahan is getting beat time and time again. But when he's giving up those deep plays, that's something that you're going to be a little concerned about. And if he struggles with that in the regular season, you may get to a point where you say, okay, Bryce Callahan's going to play sub package, and he's going to play in the slot, but maybe you have to have somebody else on the outside. That's just something the Broncos may have to look at if today is the start of a trend.
Well, Mason, when you were talking about those 5'11", 195 guys, you were saying they're small. Man, all I was thinking was those are some big boys.
That's a big boy.
It's all relative, Zach. It's all relative. Hey, I want Bryce Callahan against Hunter Renfrow, and Hunter Renfrow ate the Broncos lunch in Week 17 last year, but I want Bryce Callahan out there against Hunter Renfrow. But I don't think the matchup would be as good if he got forced into coverage against, say, Darren Waller, who ate Isaac Adams' lunch 2 times last year.
Mace, I just have one question for you. When Courtland Sutton was beating Bryce Callahan, would you say Bryce Callahan said this?
Screw this. Screw this. Screw this. Oh, maybe after a while. There was a little bit of chirping, not from Courtland Sutton, but from other guys on the offensive side as well after one of those deep catches. So it's getting a little testy out there. We have not had a fight yet. However, there was a brief exchange of pleasantries between Netani Muti and Josie Jewell after a play late in practice. So, you're getting some chirping, you're getting some yelling after the play a little bit. We're not at the fight point yet, but I do think as we have more padded practices, tempers are going to start boiling over here with the heat and just the old cliche about guys getting tired of hitting against each other. Unfortunately, no other option until week 1.
First of all, give me Netani Muti in that one.
Yeah, Josie being the vet should back down.
Yeah, and second of all, I think it's really illuminating what you're saying about Bryce and Courtland. Now, this is just one practice, not like Courtland's just been wiping the floor with them every day.
Right.
But it's interesting to me because last season I was so impressed about the job that Bryce Callahan was doing on Courtland Sutton in practice early on in training camp before he got hurt. And I think it illuminates what can happen when you miss a year's time. As Bryce Callahan was rehabbing, Courtland Sutton was just getting better and better and better and better. And all of a sudden, now Courtland might actually have the advantage in that matchup. Whereas I think last season, in the early goings of training camp, it was actually Bryce who had the advantage in that matchup. It's just an interesting thing that maybe you wouldn't think about if you didn't see those guys go up against each other in training camp every day.
Yeah, rust matters. And literally with Bryce Callahan, he's got about a week and a half worth of work over the year and a half since he had that injury in Chicago until training camp started this year. So he's got to knock the rust off a little bit. Now, the fact that he knows this scheme well, having played in it for 4 years under Vic Fangio in Chicago, it gives him an advantage. I think he can pick it up, but sometimes the timing just takes a little bit longer to get back. And Courtland Sutton, he's better than he was at this time last year. He's got an elite season in his back pocket, a Pro Bowl in his back pocket. So I think it's the combination of two things: Bryce Callahan getting back to 100%, knocking the rust off, but also Courtland Sutton is better than he was last year and at this time. And he, as we say, he's a legit wide receiver one, and he's playing like it out here. And I love the fact that he had the drop early today, and he put it behind him, and he made big plays throughout the rest of the practice. You always want to see a guy who can overcome a mistake quickly, put it out of his mind. That's part of the mental maturity that Courtland Sutton has now in year 3. It's really good to see that.
Well, and Mace, I saw that exact same thing on Sunday as well. I think Courtland actually dropped his first 3 passes. Devontae Harris got his hands on 2 of them. And then Sutton actually ended the day as my offensive player of the day because he bounced back. And you need that from Courtland. He's young, but on this offense, he's not young. He's a vet. So I love hearing that for a second day this week that he had that. And guys, in this conversation, while it may be a little scary that Bryce can't handle the big guys, there is a positive from this. AJ Boye may rather say that he would rather cover Courtland Sutton than Jerry Jeudy. Bryce Callahan, I bet he would say he would rather cover Jerry Jeudy than Courtland Sutton. So if you're able to just get those matchups and make sure that Vic's able to put his corners in positions where they're going against certain guys, well, Courtland Sutton's the number 1 receiver. If Boye can go against him, well, you're good. If you get a smaller, shiftier, better route runner type receiver, Bryce Callahan's the guy to probably take him on. So it can be a little scary at first, but if Vic's able to work those matchups well, it could actually be an advantage.
I think that's a great point.
Mace, we got a question coming in here from Livin' Patty's Life. They asked, how did Coenigsberg look running with the ones?
He held his own. When I was zoomed in on him with my binoculars, there were a couple of times that I noticed that he was able to go against Mike Purcell and get him out of the flow of the play and set up a couple of runs. So, Coenigsberg, it didn't look to me when I watched him, it didn't look too big for him. And that was a positive sign. They were rotating him with Austin Schlottman on the first team at center today. But what I'm looking for from Coenigsberg is stability, making sure that his head is not spinning around, that he doesn't know where to go, making sure that he just looks like he's comfortable in there, able to handle what's thrown at him. And I was impressed with his ability. Now there was one moment I have to go back and check my notes a little bit. There were a couple of times where you had some free rushers coming up the middle, but it looked like Coenigsberg or Schlottman, when those rushers were coming free on the blitz, were engaged elsewhere. So maybe they got to be a little bit more aware. But on the whole, not a bad day for Lloyd Coenigsberg, I thought.
That is absolutely huge to hear. Because, of course, Mike Purcell, the very first play yesterday going against Schlottman, Purcell just ran right by him. So to hear that Coenigsberg was having his own or doing well against Purcell is huge, because after practice, Vic Fangio said one of the biggest things about center, especially for these young guys, is being able to make all the checks at the line. And he said, but the thing Coenigsberg has going for him is he's smart and he excels at that. Right. So he's got the pre-snap stuff down, according to Vic Fangio. And if he's taking care of business on the field, I need to see him as the first team center tomorrow, Friday, Sunday. And I understand they're probably not just going to give him the job right now, but I need to see him taking at least some snaps with the first team every single day from now on.
I completely agree. He's the future. And, again, in the press conferences after practice, alluding to the limited number of practices before you have to go into game prep. Vic Fangio pointed that out. So to me, it's it's essential. If you see enough from Lloyd Cushenberry to where you feel comfortable, and you're going to live with some bumps over the course of the regular season, inevitable for a rookie. Even Dalton Reisner had some struggles last year. That's just something you accept, even from guys who are on an upward trajectory in general. But if you're Mike Munchak, Chris Cooper, Pat Shurmur, Vic Fangio, and you can see the positives with Lloyd Cushenberry, you've probably got to get him out there getting more reps now, because it's not a question of if Lloyd Cushenberry is going to be this team's starting center, it's when. Is it sometime this season? Is it even next season? But if it looks like it's going to be sometime this season, just go ahead, make the commitment now.
I think another thing that's a matter of if, not when, or when, not if, is DeMar Dotson. What's our DeMar Dotson update today?
Still working down the depth chart, still working with the threes. You had Jake Rogers and Elijah Wilkinson both getting reps with the ones today, and mostly Elijah Wilkinson and Jake Rogers. When he went out against Von Miller, it was what you'd expect. Not good.
Yeah, I can only imagine that wasn't a good. And speaking of that, yesterday Zach talked so much about the pass rush, really putting pressure on the offense. How did they respond well today in terms of stopping the pass rush?
Responded well, of course. They didn't have to see Bradley Chubb today. Now, that being said, you had some moments for Malik Reed. Both Malik Reed and Jerry Atakshu saw some first-team reps, but Malik Reed was flashing. And they were using him on both the right and left side, and they moved Von Miller around as well. So Von Miller had some snaps against Garrett Bowles, working as right outside linebacker. But Malik Reed had a few pressures, but the thing that I liked best about him today, guys, when he was out there, he did a great job setting the edge. And there was one play where he was defending the run, and Philip Lindsay was coming at him, going to the left side, and basically he took advantage of Bowles lunging and got Bowles out of position and then whipped around and closed the hole, and Phil had nowhere to go. A really savvy play by Malik Reed against the run. He looked impressive out there today.
And yesterday he was getting some pressure off on Drew Lock as well. So that's great, because we talked about the depth there maybe not being very good. Well, if Malik Reed steps up, that would be absolutely huge. Maybe the Shaq Barrett type of role and type of player, which would just be huge. Mace, I got to get a Jerry Jeudy update today. Of course, Courtland Sutton brought the heat. Did Jerry Jeudy do anything that stood out either way to you today?
It was a quiet day for Jerry Jeudy. He was going up against the ones a little bit more today. But, like, for example, he had a play in I believe it was a red zone period. I'm actually just going to go back through my notes here really quick, because I want to get the details right on it. But Jeudy was running a crossing route, and what happened was that you had Kareem Jackson there step for step, and Jeudy caught the ball, but Kareem Jackson made sure that it went no further. It was actually it was a 3rd and goal play from the 5-yard line. So Drew Lock had gone back to throw. It was in a 7-on-7 period, and Kareem did a good job kind of reading Judy's route, making sure it was covered. And this is the sort of thing that you're going to have when you're in the red zone. You've got extra traffic. You're going to have to be able to make plays with guys bearing down on you. So a little bit of a teachable moment, but also a great play by Kareem Jackson to make sure that it didn't happen. But aside from that, like, there was one play where Drew Lock targeted Jerry Jeudy, and this isn't on Jerry Jeudy. Drew Lock, he's rolling to his left, and he tries the cross his body throw. He's moving one direction, he throws the other. Not a lot on it. An easy pass defense for the defense, an incompletion. That's not on Jerry Jeudy. That's on Drew Lock, just sometimes trying to do a little bit too much. So really a quiet day for Jerry Jeudy. But again, he's going up against the first corners, and he went up against AJ Boye 8 times, and Boye kept him in check. So the learning is ongoing for Jerry Jeudy. Not every day is going to be spectacular.
And then I think the last requisite update we need is, how did the running backs look today?
It was a quiet day. They did emphasize the run early, and both Melvin Gordon and Philip Lindsay had some nice runs. They weren't as active in the passing game as they have been over the last few days of practice. Maybe that's something that they'll work on a little bit more. But at the same time, there were moments where the holes just weren't there. And I allude to Malik Reed making that play against the run, setting the edge really well, and saw a lot of good work from the defensive line against the run. Melvin Gordon and Philip Lindsay at times didn't have many places to go. I really, the run that jumps out to me, though, it was early. It was probably the best running play, and it was actually the third play of the first team period. And what happened, they actually opened with 2s versus 2s. So Philip Lindsay was out there with the 2s and had a real nice job of getting the left side sealed. And Philip Lindsay was off and running for a gain that would have been at least 10 yards in game conditions. That looked really good. And also, I know they weren't as involved as much in the passing game, but one of the few bright spots in the red zone period for the Broncos offense, for the Broncos first team offense, was Melvin Gordon with a little catch and run. And if he had laid out at the pylon, I think he would have scored. It worked out to where he was stopped at about the 2-yard line. But I think in a game, Melvin Gordon is going to lay out, try to get to the pylon, get the score. So good play for him.
Speaking of the running backs, did you see Curtis Modkin saying they don't think they just have a 1-2 punch? They think they have a 1-2-3 punch with Royce Freeman.
Okay, well, here's the thing, as you would say, RK.
I would.
If it's a 1-2-3 punch, why am I not seeing Royce Freeman out there with the 1s at all?
Yeah, that's exactly
because
what I thought, Mace. Yeah, I mean, when I saw that, I thought, boy, why aren't you showing that? Is Royce Freeman going to be the secret weapon on offense that they don't even want the small local media contingent to see?
Maybe.
I think it's got to be a confidence thing, just trying to keep his confidence up, trying to get the best out of him. He is a talented player. We know that. He's just hasn't been able to quite find it yet at the NFL level. And so maybe they're just trying to squeeze it out of him a little bit more, build up his confidence a little bit, and allow him to hopefully reach his potential, which I feel like he hasn't yet hit.
Yeah, he caught some passes on checkdowns today. Royce Freeman did, but not really very, very spectacular. That being said, even though Levante Bellamy has had some flashes, I think Royce Freeman makes this team because he's a security blanket. He's somebody who's played extensively. If something happens to Philip Lindsay or Melvin Gordon, at least with Royce Freeman, he can go out there and make a professional acquittal of himself. You'd like to see him be more spectacular than he has been over the last couple of years, but he's not going to melt down if you put him out there. And I think that's why Royce Freeman sticks. But really, there's a big gap between the top 2 backs and Royce Freeman. And so I hear Curtis Modkins, and I think you might be onto something where you're saying you're trying to help Royce Freeman's confidence. But if they really felt it was 1-2-3 punch, then wouldn't you give Royce Freeman some looks taking the handoffs from Drew Lock? That's all I'm saying.
Yeah, without a doubt. And that's actually, that's something that I've noticed this camp is Levante Bellamy getting a lot more run, not with the 1s, but just making a lot more plays than Royce. And it reminds me of Phil, when we talked to Phil last year, maybe week 12, and someone asked him about, the 1-2 punch with you and Royce. And he said, whoa, guys, don't forget about Devontae Booker. We got this 1-2-3 with Booker as well. And it was like, oh, well, the only reason that we don't think of Devontae Booker is because he's not playing. Kind of same with Royce.
Now, what's interesting, I see a comment coming in from someone who identifies himself as some person. I love that. It says, I like Royce, I really do, but he might have proven the point that you can run a guy too much in college. And you know what? That's why he dropped to round 3, was concerns about the workload. And you think back of the Broncos' recent draft rookie acquisition history for running backs, 2 guys who didn't work out as day 2 picks were Monte Ball, and Royce Freeman is trending in that direction. What do they have in common, gentlemen? Heavy workload at Wisconsin and Oregon, respectively.
It's a good point. To me, it all started with that high ankle sprain, and I don't know if that just derailed him, but he got off to such a good start It's the first few weeks of his rookie season, and he got that high ankle sprain. He came back that season. He wasn't the same then, and he's never really felt explosive since then to me.
Yeah, it's been kind of hard to watch. I mean, I hope he does well. Hope he can get it going, but clearly he looks to be well behind the top two. That said, I think we should probably start doing a 53-man projection here. Maybe that's what we do on Saturday on the off day. I'll write a 53-man projection. I've got Royce still on my 53.
Yeah, I can. I mean, if I know anything about NFL coaches, it's that they fall in love with things like what you were saying earlier. Oh, he's not going to fall all over himself. It's like these guys shouldn't be here in the first place if you think they're going to fall all over themselves when they get out there. For me, I would be looking for a young, explosive guy like Levante Bellamy, but what can you do? Any last notes and things that we need to touch on here, Mace?
Yeah, you know what? It's under the radar because he's the number 3 quarterback. Britt Ripping just looks a lot smoother than Jeff Driscoll out there. And it doesn't seem imminent, but I'd like to see Brett Ripping get a few second-team looks from time to time, especially without game reps this summer. He's solid. I think what I see from Brett Rippon is somebody who looks unruffled. Whereas Jeff Driscoll, for example, you can kind of sense the gears trying to mesh in his mind as he's working through things. Jeff Driscoll had a couple of plays in 7-on-7 guys where he didn't get the pass off. And one of the things about 7-on-7 is that the drill exists for a lot of reasons, but one of them is for the quarterback, you want them to throw the ball because it's about making a decision for which play has either the least risk or if guys are covered, which is the play that still has the best chance of working out. You want him to decide. You want him to make a commitment. And so I recall with Paxton Lynch a few years ago, when I see a quarterback in 7-on-7 not throw, it sets off the alarm bells in my head, guys.
Yeah, without a doubt. I prefer the Paxton approach of just taking off and running as opposed to just holding the ball.
Yeah, the whistle blew twice in 3 snaps in 7-on-7 for Jeff Driscoll, and that's a sound no quarterback wants to hear. A bad sound.
It sounds like sacks.
Mace, people are chomping at the bit in the comment section. They need to know, how is the long snapper competition looking? Okay,
well, I'm going to tell you guys this. If you want one-on-one interviews at camp, in past camps, you just go up to the guy and ask him coming off the field for practice. Now you have to go through the team. 2 of the guys that I have requested for one-on-one interviews, because I want to get to the bottom of this long snapper competition, requested both Wes Farnsworth and Jacob Bob.
Oh boy, I can't wait for that one.
Hey, you know what? We pride ourselves on thorough coverage here, gentlemen.
Amen.
And what I want to do, I got to go through the rosters around the league. How many teams have 2 long snappers? Frankly, guys, with only 80 players in camp, I'm shocked the Broncos decided to come in and have that long snapper competition anyway, with the roster truncated as it were. But hey, so I want to get to the bottom of this. I want to find out what a long snapper competition is like.
Well, as we know, Casey Kreider just wasn't getting it done.
Yeah,
nope.
Yeah. What part?
He wasn't getting it done in the not getting paid very much money category.
Yeah, I mean, what part of Pro Bowler don't you want on your team?
The $3 million part.
Well, no, he's at $1 million for the Giants.
Okay.
He's a little over 1. And I wish we had the clip of Tom McMahon's answer when he was asked about the long snapper competition and the fact that Casey Kreider wasn't around, because that was the guy who basically pleaded the fifth on that one.
Oh, wait, Mace, I do think we have the clip. I think it's screw this.
Screw this. Screw this. Screw this. Oh, my goodness gracious. You guys, you're too much.
That one lives on forever. That one, I'm so happy that happened. All right, Mace. I think that's a fantastic recap of practice. No one is more thorough than you in your practice notes, and we really appreciate that. So for those of you who are watching live, we thank you for tuning in. For those of you who are going to head over to the podcast forum with us, stay tuned.